What I saw my husband doing, it started with a sound. Not a loud one. Just a whisper of laughter drifting through the hallway, soft enough that most people would ignore it. But when you've lived with someone for years, you know their voice. You know when laughter isn't shared, when it doesn't belong to you. That's how I found myself standing in the doorway one ordinary Thursday night, frozen, listening to a version of my husband I didn't recognize. For 12 years, I believed in the man I married. I believed in the long hours, the late-night calls, the business trips. I believed his explanations when his phone stayed face down during dinner, and I believed his apologies when I caught the smell of perfume that wasn't mine. Love makes you blind, not because you can't see the truth, but because you don't want to. That night, something inside me finally opened its eyes. He was in his study, the door slightly ajar. I was walking down the hall with laundry in my arms when I saw it, the reflection from his computer screen in the mirror opposite the doorway. There she was, smiling, laughing, wearing a silk robe that left little to the imagination. He leaned closer to the camera, saying things no married man should ever say. My heart didn't break, it cracked open in silence. My hands trembled, but my mind didn't. I backed away quietly, put down the laundry, and sat in the dark for a long time. The first wave was disbelief. Then came anger. Not the kind that makes you scream, but the kind that makes you cold. I had built our life. I had given up opportunities, friends, dreams, just to build his empire beside him. And now he was handing pieces of that life to a stranger behind a screen. But this isn't a story about heartbreak. It's about awakening. For weeks, I watched. Calmly. Carefully. He thought I was busy redecorating the house. In truth, I was redecorating my life. I went through our accounts, our joint credit cards, our messages. I saw how he'd been sending her money, loans, he called them, from our savings. I found hotel receipts from trips he told me were corporate strategy weekends. He was strategic, all right, just not in the way he thought. Every discovery was a stitch in the new armor I was sewing for myself. I didn't confront him right away. I smiled. I cooked. I laughed at his jokes, even when my insides burned. He thought he was fooling me, but I was documenting everything. Screenshots. Transactions. The dates of his lies. I became a ghost in my own home, moving silently through the rooms, collecting evidence like a detective preparing for trial. The more I watched, the more patterns appeared. He wasn't just unfaithful, he was reckless. The man who once lectured me about financial responsibility was spending thousands trying to impress his mistress. I saw him transfer $5,000 for her birthday. He was buying her the same perfume he once gifted me, the same jewelry he claimed he couldn't afford last Christmas. Every lie he told became another brick in the wall between us. But I wasn't going to simply expose him. That would be too easy. He needed to feel what I felt, the humiliation, the helplessness, the fear. And I knew exactly how to deliver it. I started with small things. His car keys, misplaced. His emails, mysteriously unread. His calendar invitations, accidentally deleted. When he asked, I looked confused, concerned even. Maybe you're just stressed, I'd say. He started to question his memory. He started to lose control, just like I once had under his gaslighting. Then I moved on to the real plan. I created a quiet exit. I opened a private bank account and slowly transferred small amounts of money, always under $500 so he wouldn't notice. I spoke to a lawyer, the kind who specializes in high-value divorces and hidden assets. I copied every document I'd need to prove what he'd done. By the time he realized anything was wrong, I'd already built my escape. But revenge isn't just about leaving. It's about turning the tables. So I waited for the perfect moment, our anniversary dinner. He made a big show of booking the most expensive restaurant in town, trying to convince himself he was still the loving husband. I wore red, his favorite color, once upon a time, and smiled like the woman he thought he still controlled. Over dinner, he talked about work, about success, about loyalty. I listened. Then I leaned forward, slid a small envelope across the table, and said softly, "You might want to read that before dessert." Inside were printed screenshots, bank transfers, photos, and the final piece, a notarized notice from my lawyer. His face drained of color. He looked around, panic flickering behind his eyes as if the entire restaurant could see the truth. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. For once, I was the one who had the silence on my side. He tried to speak, to explain, to twist the story, but it was too late. The tables had turned. The man who had mocked me for overreacting was now begging me to understand. I stood up, placed my napkin on the table, and said, "You should have thought about that before you turned our marriage into a transaction." By the next morning, I was gone. What he didn't know was that the house, the car, and the savings he thought he controlled were already legally protected in my name. The mistress? She didn't stick around once the money stopped flowing. His reputation? Shattered, after his employer received anonymous copies of certain company-funded hotel stays. He had made me feel small, invisible, so I made sure his empire saw who he truly was. But here's the truth I learned through all of it: revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about rebuilding yourself so completely that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. Months later, I sat in my new apartment, smaller, quieter, but mine. I drank coffee without tension in my chest. I went back to work, reconnected with friends I'd abandoned for his ego. And one morning, I looked in the mirror and saw something I hadn't seen in years: peace. He texted me once, months after the divorce finalized. "Can we talk?" he wrote. I looked at the message for a long time, then deleted it. There was nothing left to say. Because what I saw that night, my husband's betrayal, wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of me finally seeing my own strength. He taught me how to survive without trust. I taught him how it feels to lose everything he took for granted. And that, in the end, was the sweetest revenge.